Absolutely, and that's a good place to start. So I've come from a strong background in organisational development. I've been privileged enough to head up and be in charge of leadership development and staff development across a lot of industries, including an airline, the old defunct Ansett Airlines Australia, where I was in charge of development for 10,000 staff. And also lucky enough to work in some fantastic professional education business schools around the world. So in my journey in those roles, I saw a lot of things going on, a lot of great things, a lot of things that were tripping people up, a lot of patterns. And so as I evolved as a professional, I started to really think about what difference I could make and what I wanted to bring to the world. So kind of all that's come together in the business that I have, which is truly empowering people in workplaces to be aligned to what they do and to be skilled up as best they can to work within the realms of the modern world of work. That can be entrepreneurs, or that can be that lovely term that we use, intrapreneurs, people that work inside organisations. I also like to position myself, because it's a fun space to be in that top zone, that true peak performance zone. So very, very, very talented professionals, exceptional professionals is the title that I give to them. So I see myself as running a business school with a finishing school philosophy. I take them at the top end, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that's important in a minute. So that's what I am in a nutshell, and that's what I do in a nutshell.
Fantastic, Wendy. Thanks for the intro. I love the word exceptional, and I guess in a leadership role, it's critical to become exceptional, to manage and to lead a large organization. So who would be your ideal target market? Are we talking CEOs or executives of a similar nature, entrepreneurs perhaps? Can you elaborate on that a little bit further?
Yeah, so the people that I work with are exceptional professionals. So that can mean CEOs, not so much CEOs heading up organizations of 10,000. I like to work in that middle zone. So CEOs that might be heading up and looking after employees from about 10 employees up to about 500. And I also work with talented professionals with inside organizations. And I'm not just talking about corporates. One of my recent clients was a super specialist within the eye health area. And he was one of only 8 people in the world that was classed as this super specialist in this particular eye thing that he did. And so that's a definition of a talented, highly talented, exceptional professional as well. Yeah, so sure. Not just CEOs, and it's not necessarily just formal leaders either. You could be an exceptional professional, and it's important for you to lead your field and lead yourself, but you actually don't have any responsibility from people. I just see that group as being a very unlooked after, if that's a word, unlooked after group, where we're often very good at focusing on just leaders or general average person, but there are very few people that work in that top zone, and there are some very, very unique needs within that top zone, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute as well.
Sure. Great, thanks, Wendy. So if we focus on the term exceptional, can you perhaps give us a practical definition of what that looks like in the workplace?
So if you're exceptional, you're very talented. You may have even been hired because of your innovative ideas or your creative, unique way of looking at things. You certainly graduated quite a few years ago from university with good results, so you are sought after. You're not the average. So the best way to describe it is that you're not average. You're definitely in that top 20% of the population in terms of achievement, talent, just standard innate capabilities. And there's very much an innovative, creative focus in there as well. Not necessarily coming out every day. For example, the eye surgeon, he's definitely innovative and creative, but you could look at him and not necessarily see that. So it's that person that, I love the term that Steve Jobs uses or did use around entrepreneurs, around it's the misfits, it's the quirky ones. So it's the Steve Jobs and it's the Mark Zuckerbergs, people like that. But it's not just people like that as well. It's people that are working in banks that know they're special, know they're talented, know they sit above the average, but in a humble way. And they're true assets to workplaces, very, very gifted. That's about, in a nutshell, the best descriptor that I can give. And you kind of know, I say to people when I present, you're in the right room if you're this, this, and this. And even though people don't like singing their praises, especially in Australia, we are kind of very humble, and there's that tall poppy syndrome. You know if you're different, if you're special, if you've always stood out, just like the Mark Zuckerbergs would have. They knew that they were a little bit different and a little bit special.
Interesting that you mentioned the word tall poppy syndrome, and that sparks quite a few memories, but also thoughts about what is generally accepted in the Australian culture in the workplace. And I know from experience that being exceptional per se, or being entrepreneurial and being entrepreneurial as well, is stepping outside of the convention and perhaps doing something that is very unconventional. What sort of issues do you envisage there being in a workplace if one is pursuing that exceptional pathway?
So many issues, and we've only got an hour. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing as well, because over the years I've seen those issues, and one of the ironies or paradoxes is that you might get recruited because you are unique, you are talented, and then you get inside an organization and it's thumped out of you. All of a sudden you need to fit in with the status quo. Your ideas and your great fantastic ideas around a project that you might have headed up is kicked into the long grass, because there might be the culture of fear and difference. So there's that. It's difficult enough in the world of work and the cultures in which a lot of us operate in to be okay in a workplace anyway and feel safe at work and feel valued. You add to that somebody that is slightly more special, more talented, more creative, more innovative, that thinks outside of the box, and that's a group that's even more stressed, more frustrated, more hitting their heads against a brick wall. And in my experience, a lot of symptoms present, and I talk about that when I start working with people. Do you find you go to work and you've got Monday-itis every day, not just on Sunday evening or Monday morning, but it hangs around you every day? Well, that's a symptom that is actually not a real symptom that you don't like your job or you don't like working. It's a symptom of being underutilized. You're a very clever person, but you're not being fully utilized in that workplace. So yeah, I'm just touching on it, and let's not digress, but yeah.
Yeah, so I do want to touch upon business education per se, and let's go there shortly. But in terms of being exceptional, obviously that comes with a whole range of issues and challenges, and for the employee. And I like to use the word entrepreneur quite often here, because the entrepreneur is the person that I define as being exceptional, and certainly the person that is going against the grain. That person that is challenging the status quo, that wants to work outside the box, etc. But in most typical organizations, that's not generally accepted. So this is perhaps where you come into it. How do you go about educating managers or business leaders to help develop this culture of exceptional behavior and performance, and perhaps even embracing and adopting and recruiting entrepreneurs or people with that entrepreneurial flair? So what are a few things that first come to mind in terms of educating those business leaders?
Fantastic question. And that's exactly what happens. People go in and they are like salmon swimming upstream or going against the grain. And what I have observed is that in most cases, the environment, the culture is stronger than the individual. So in the end, they are the ones that dumb down, put their head down, play by the rules, and that creates all sort of symptoms. So it's really hard to stay standing out if it's not accepted for you to be innovative and stand out. So one of the things that I do, rather than doing it outside in, I do it inside out. So in the old days, I might have worked with architecture and culture change to change it that way. But I have observed that it's not the most powerful way to do it. The most powerful way to do it is work with the individual on the inside out. If I know who I am and I am skilled up to work in that environment, then I will change. The only thing I can change is me. And then magically, icing on the cake, things around me change as well. So there are two things with working with the individual. Number one, it's so important for them to understand their context and understand their environment and to know it's not about them. It's really important, for example, to know that they might be working in an organization that is that is inherited an old style industrial age setup, for example, so that they're in a culture which is fear driven, and it's about disconnection and silos, which is the old industrial age, rather than love. And I don't use the word love in kind of an airy fairy way. I use it in an important, strong way for modern organizations, and connection. So if they know and learn about their environment and know that it's not about them, then they have a better chance of navigating it. So if you understand your environment, you can change your environment and work better within it. And then it's also about giving them those very, very specialized skills in communication, relationships, because most of the time, the reason why talented professionals, exceptional professionals are stressed is because they're working blindly in this environment and they don't have those finite skills to deal with it. So you give them those two things, that's a really powerful place to be.
Fantastic insight. So once you get involved in an organization, say typically one that has 5 or more people, generally how long does it take to change that culture and get the majority of, or should I say all the people involved, to actually move down that path of exceptional performance and the desire to be that next Google or that next Facebook company? So
yeah, that's a really interesting one, and I don't necessarily think we've got the answers to that at the moment, because I think we're in a true transition phase, which means pretty much up until now we've still been trying to tackle it through large change management projects that we've thrown a lot of money at. The ANZ Bank in Australia is a perfect example. They were quite innovative a few years ago, where they did try and work on it from a large scale architecture point of view, but also from the inside out approach. And they probably got about 60% there, but I feel that there were some things missing that around what we know now. If they had added that component, it might have worked. So if you speak to a lot of people, without being negative, because the ANZ Bank are doing great things, it didn't necessarily work or didn't necessarily end up being where it needed to be. So I think what we're doing now is we're just really experimenting with a way to do it so it will work. So I don't have any strong examples of how it does work, except to say, and we'll talk about this when we talk about where modern world of work is heading, that there is this fantastic example that this guru reinventing organizations guy from Belgium called Fred Laloux, he cites a Dutch nursing home case study. So if you Google Dutch nursing home case study, Fred Laloux, it's a beautiful example of how everything was thrown out, everything was reinvented, and it really has had pragmatic results in profit, engagement, low turnover, etc. My understanding is that Google and places like that are really trying to also have the magic answer where employees can bring their best selves to work. At the moment, it's an old structure though with some bolt-ons. So what the Dutch nursing home thing did was it wasn't an old structure with bolt-ons. It completely was a different new platform. So Google and places like that, I believe, are also taking note and looking at that to see what they can learn from that as well. So long answer to a short question, it very much is working on the individual and really shoring them up, and also looking at the context as well. Very powerful together, but from the inside out rather than what we've done in the past, traditionally outside in.